For the past several weeks, the nation of Iran has been at the top of the news. Would the United States enter into diplomatic talks with them? Would those talks be direct talks or indirect talks? Would the follow-up threat of military action become reality? In fact, it was all of the above. Israel attacked Iran, the United States got involved. Now, once again, there's pressure for diplomatic talks. The nuclear sites in Iran have been damaged, no one quite sure how badly, but how does that change the calculus for future discussions? Sitting down with me today is the former National Security Advisor to President Obama and a former U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, General James Jones. General, thanks for doing this with us.
Pleasure.
When Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, they listed a long list of grievances that went decades back that justified the reason in their minds for their attack. When the United States bombed Iran, then the message that came out of this administration was a long list of grievances that went back decades that Iran had done to us and to allies in the region. Has holding a grudge, has going back and visiting history become a legitimate reason for any military to be utilized around planet Earth?
I think where the grudge involves nuclear weapons, it's probably a pretty good reason.
It's, as we look at Iran, they have a history of destabilizing the region, whether that's Syria or Lebanon, or Israel or Yemen or Saudi, or this is going on. And so the concern has been, if they have nuclear capability, what's the scenario? What are the potential scenarios for instability being furthered in the region?
Well, I think that if they were able to get a nuclear weapon, most countries in the world, and I would probably include Russia and China in this, are very skittish about that capability being in the hands of a regime that exports terrorism wherever they can. And so I think that that Iran today is in a much weakened state than it was several years ago. Hamas has certainly been attrited. Hezbollah as well. The Houthis have realized that shutting down the Straits of Hormuz and the safety at sea is not particularly in their interests. And so this is a very good moment for change to come to the Middle East, and with that, maybe even a period of lasting peace.
We live in a time of instant news. We want knowledge, we get it instantly. We see pictures from halfway around the world instantly, even on our own telephone. And so when we saw what President Trump's administration did with bombing of Iran, in the immediate aftermath, he said, we completely obliterated the nuclear program. A couple of days go by, and at least one of the agencies had said, well, maybe we didn't completely obliterate, maybe there's some limited damage. My question is, what do we know? And I underline that word, what do we actually know that we've done? And how long is it before you would be confident that you have complete information?
Well, I think that you have to go through the paces here when you do something like this. And one of the things you have to do carefully, since you're going to be subjected to all kinds of criticisms, for what you did, or judgments and saying, well, we still have a nuclear capability. I think you have to kind of give it some time to wait and see what the final story is. And but I think, given the size and the scope of the strike, I think it's fair to assume that there was significant damage done, whether it's years or whatever. Time will tell, but it certainly wasn't minor damage.
Is the impact the same, whether it's 6 months or 3 years worth of damage, making Iran come to the table, making Iran, say, uncle, so to speak? Is the impact the same regardless of which scenario it is?
Well, I think one of the things that Iran must realize now is that it really does have no friends. The Russians have been silent. The Russians are on record of saying they don't think Iran should get nuclear weapons. China's been relatively quiet. North Korea has been silent. I mean, typically, I mean, those are that's kind of the group that you think of as the fearsome foursome, right? So I think that what if I were the supreme leader, what I'd be worried about is a popular uprising inside the country.
Let's talk about the potential for regime change, because when George Herbert Walker Bush and his administration liberated Kuwait, there were complaints after the fact that he hadn't, and I use the term that they used in the news at the time, finished the job. That some thought he should have continued marching forward and removed Saddam Hussein from Iraq at that time. Later, of course, we had further troubles with Saddam, and we all know the story there. But are we seeing a similar scenario now, where the idea of regime change was dangled out there by the president and by his administration, and yet more recently what the president has said is regime change equals chaos. We don't want chaos in the region. So are we missing an opportunity to, quote, finish the job?
Well, I think the most recent history regarding popular uprisings is that in Iran it's been on the increase every year, with last year being a nearly nationwide uprising. I think that if there is going to be regime change, it should come from inside the country, and I think that the seeds are planted for that to happen. We'll wait and see what does happen, but you might never get another opportunity in the near future with the proxies being weakened, Iran being weakened, economic disasters. The people of Iran deserve a different kind of government, and the day is coming when they will get that. But I think it's going to come from within the country, not because the United States or anybody else says we're for regime change. I think we would like to see a democratic Iran come out of this, but it's going to have to come from the people themselves. History
is defined by moments in time, and it seems like this has the potential to be one of those moments in time. But we heard the president talk in terms of regime change. Muammar Gaddafi was a bad guy, but there has been utter chaos since he's out. Libya is not an organized state. With Iraq, the removal of Saddam Hussein here, 20 some odd years later, things are better in Baghdad. Things are finally coming about. It's been a long road to get there. So does change have to equal chaos?
No, I don't think so. I think that, following military action, the lessons of World War II and even Korea were, if we weren't involved in nation building, think where Europe would be today, or Japan. So I think you have to have a comprehensive plan, but that doesn't mean that you have to be the military. You have to use military force to get regime change. I think that has to come from the people. And in Iran's case, I think ultimately it will come from the people.
And the current regime in Iran has brutally silenced opposition at times. In their weakened state, is there an opportunity for those people? Is there a better opportunity for those people to rise up?
I think so. I think if you look at the, I'll use the term decapitation of the leadership over the last several weeks, starting with what the Israelis have been able to do and what we continue to be able to do. If I would imagine the Supreme Leader would be a little bit apprehensive right now. But I would also indicate that if he's going to be apprehensive, it's going to be about what could happen inside the country. Because the IRGC has been decimated in terms of its leadership, and we'll just have to wait and see. But I've always thought 2025, with what was happening in Iran, both with the Trump administration basically laying down the roadmap for not becoming a nuclear power. So first offered to negotiate. They typically did what they always do, and they basically tried to play rope-a-dope and just string us along. And finally, President Trump had enough of that and took step two, which was a kinetic strike along with the Israelis. And I think step three now is what happens inside the country.
Well, and let's talk about that, because we saw, first there was a debate, is it direct talks or indirect talks? There were questions over whether we would or would not have diplomatic discussions at all. There were questions about whether or not to have military activity or not. Yeah. There were questions the president dangled out regime change and then said, we don't want to get involved in regime change. So we've heard both sides on several of these things. Is there a realistic expectation moving forward? And what is it?
Well, I think, what we've seen with successive U.S. administrations is a rather futile pursuit of policy of appeasement. If we can dangle enough carrots out there, they'll come to the table. And, whether it's plane loads of money in the middle of the night or some other way to get them to come to the table. It turns out to be, I think, a mistaken strategy. Appeasement doesn't work with Iran. They understand force, they understand direct threats, and I think they made a mistake in thinking that President Trump was going to behave like previous administrations and pursue a politic of appeasement, but not really serious about a kinetic solution. And I think they misjudged it, and so we'll see what happens next.
Iran has repeatedly said their nuclear program is for civilian purposes. This is to help create their electric grid all over the nation. Iran has the second biggest reserve of oil and gas of any nation on earth. They could literally supply all the energy they need to their nation at virtually no cost. Why is there a logical reason that you would pursue a civilian energy program that costs tens of billions of dollars to put together when you have something that costs next to nothing already available?
Yeah, I think the truth is that wasn't what their goal was, and I think it'll be a long time before Western governments trust anything that the current regime says. It's just not true, and I think that as a result of the action taken, we'll see if that changes their behavior.
The unfortunate reality in the Middle East region is instability is a word that is just perpetual. There are pockets of trouble seemingly always. Iran has had its hand in a lot of that instability. So moving forward, what's necessary to have a stable or more stable Middle East?
Well, I think the people of Iran will have to decide that. I think, frankly, I mean, you don't take polls over there, but the people who know Iran have said the people of Iran really love the United States and they like America and they want to be like America. They want a democracy. And this may be one of the best chances they'll have to get one. We'll have to wait and see what happens, because it's not going to be forced upon them, but it's going to have to, if there is a regime change, it's going to have to come from within. And there, as you know, there are a fair number of serious groups out there that are working on achieving that goal and bringing a democratic Iran to the forefront of the family of nations.
Final question. You've got a great collective knowledge over your years. You've worked under several presidents. You've worked in the region. You were special envoy to the Middle East. You have maybe a better hand on the pulse of what's going on in that part of the world than the vast majority of people. If you had to give a grade, A, B, C, D, or F, to the Trump administration for how they have handled challenging situations in Gaza, in Syria, in Iran, if you had to give a grade to the Trump administration for how they've handled the Middle East so far, what would that grade be and why?
In terms of creating a situation where the potential is out there right now that Iran could be convinced not to develop nuclear weapons. And if there is a change of government in Iran, I think this could be a historical moment for the region. I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
General, thanks. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.